Presentation of Conversations with Your Higher Self. This is a special edition where we are going to talk about psychic protection and negative entities. And today we have Ellen Reed. She is a DNA activator, twin flame and ascension guide, psychic medium, astral teacher, and so much more. Hello, Ellen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's Ellen Red, just for anybody that's listening.
Red. Did I say it wrong? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just like to clarify in case anybody's trying to find me online.
Ellen Red. We will have your name posted on here too, so you will be findable, and we'll post a link below too for anybody that wants to get in contact with you. So let's start our conversation today with going over some of the basics. Give me your definition of entity versus psychic attack versus maybe a negative attachment, if there's any difference between the three.
Okay. So an entity would, in my awareness, would be a being, whether it be a third dimensional human being or a physical being or a non-physical being, would be an actual being or energy or soul or spirit, right? That could be negative. Now you could have them in a physical dimension. We'll use Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, right? Is a negative energy. It doesn't mean that he isn't a soul of the divine. It just means he's negative, right? He still hasn't healed himself. And there are in the non-physical or fourth dimensional realms energies like that still haven't transmuted and been able to ascend into higher energies, if you will. Then there's what was your other question? Attachment?
Yeah, a negative attachment or even a psychic attack.
Mm-hmm. So in my awareness, a negative attachment can also come from the same thing, fourth dimensional energies, but it can also come from the person or the soul having an attachment to something like addiction. If you're addicted to something, you're going to have a negative attachment, and that can both create a negative attachment within you, but it can also draw to you negative entities. So it can open the door for negative entities to attach to you. And then the last one was a psychic attack, and a psychic attack could be as simple as having negative thought for somebody, right? And then that negative thought can be, felt as a psychic attack on the other person. So it doesn't have to be an entity or an energy that, is clinging onto that person. It can just be as simple as a bad intention that can cast spells, really, even through thought.
Wow. Now that's interesting. You brought up the fourth dimension, because I've heard a lot of stuff about that dimension. That realm holds a lot of these troublesome entities in it. What gives with that?
Well, humans and where we're at in the third dimension, or the third dimensional consciousness, is it's a lower realm. And until we get into the fifth dimension, then in the fifth dimension, it becomes more like heavenly, like you would see in the movie Avatar. It's more pleasant and loving, unconditional love. And you can't get to the fifth dimension without passing through the fourth dimension. And so what happens in the fourth dimension is that's really the astral realms. And in the astral realms, there are lots of souls there that are not incarnate, that are also not necessarily benevolent. And so a lot of souls who are living in the earth plane that haven't healed, or Jeffrey Dahmer again would be an example of that, even after they become not incarnate anymore, they're going to go into that fourth dimension. It's maybe it could be called purgatory, right? From different religious texts, it's similar to that. So they're going to go in that dimension, and then usually they get spit back out onto the earth plane if they're in the reincarnation cycle, right? So they get a loop, they get to come back because they're not allowed to go into higher realms. It's kind of like the higher realms are accessible to everybody as we ascend and clear our energies and things. But it's kind of like they don't just let everybody there without cleaning up your energy first, right? So the fourth dimension holds certain entities that are not, their frequency isn't high enough to enter higher dimensions.
So I've heard from quite a few people lately that a lot of people are feeling this increase in negative attachments and things happening and all of that. Is it because we're shifting towards the fifth dimension? So we're crossing through this realm and they're attracted to us? Is that what's going on?
That's part of it. As I understand it, people, because we're in the ascension process as a collective, people are becoming more conscientious of it, right? Secondly, what we're seeing in the physical reality right now, which is a lot, is a reflection of what's already going on in the fourth dimension. So we're just seeing the aftermath. It's already happened there. And what we're seeing in the physical world is sort of like the aftermath of that galactic war that's going on in the fourth dimension. Wow. So people are starting to become more conscientious about that, because it's kind of getting hard to deny that there's something going on, right?
Yeah.
What was the other question?
Well, why are these entities interested in us as we're moving through? Is it just simply because our light is attracting them, or are they interested in creating havoc, or what's their reason for being interested in us?
Well, those entities that are in the fourth dimension have been for a long time feeding on the energy or the light of humanity. Mm-hmm. And as we're going through this great collective awakening, they are, of course, they're terrified of us becoming awakened as a collective, right? The more that we awaken and the more that we as a collective raise our vibration, the less power that they have. They've been allowed to rule that domain, if you will. And so for those that are on the ascension path, in order to get to 5D, you've got to pass through them, but you've got to be able to hold enough light to transmute whatever it is that they're throwing at us. And so that's why you're feeling that the timeline splitting and the different, you probably feel like you're coming in and out of timelines a lot lately. Yeah. Do you feel that way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's because we're definitely being under attack, but it's also because they're desperate, because we're in that stage of great awakening. So it's kind of like, once we get there as a collective, their game is up. The gig is up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they have a lot at stake as far as the negative energies, right? Everything they've ever, they're like black hole beings, some of them. And so their game is up once we take our power back and raise our vibrations.
So a lot of these strange things that we're seeing play out in the physical world right now, like child trafficking and, some of the darker stuff that's going on in our government, the shadow government and all of that, is that like what you're referring to along the lines of Jeffrey Dahmer? Those people have this negative agenda that they're carrying out, and they're kind of driven by entities or negative energies?
Yeah, absolutely. They of course are individually accountable for their behaviors as humans, but there are fourth dimensional beings that are affecting their behavior, and that can hack them basically, or what we would call possession. I like to kind of put it in religious terms in certain ways, because it is the truth is the truth. And it's kind of like, I know in the new age or spiritual community, we like to say things a certain way, but in a way it's still the same thing. The more we change, the more everything remains the same, right? It's called possession. And they do attach themselves onto humans and then influence the humans through other psychic technology to alter that human's choices. And that's what we're seeing play out. And so a lot of those entities in the 4D or mischievous spirits, they because they don't have a body, they can't feel the feeling of raping a child. We probably have to wipe that word out or bleep it out. But anyways, they can't feel that feeling unless they attach themselves to a human being with a physical vessel.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of humans that are doing some of those deeds, and then they start to hate themselves. Why did I do that? Or, they start to feel like, why they don't understand that they're being manipulated by fourth dimensional beings.
So are there just these negative entities in the fourth dimension, or do they reside in other places as well, like throughout the universe?
Well, as far as I understand and what I was shown when I came out of my body and as went through my spiritual awakening, in the 5D is kind of, I don't believe that they exist there anymore. From what I was shown, 5D is kind of like an unconditionally loving place. You have to get your energy to that place where you can love all beings, and you're not going to be loving all beings and still wanting to do those negative deeds. So as I understand, 5D is like where love is. It's the heavenly realm. You start to get into the higher realms there. 4D is not so much that. 4D is definitely astrally in the cosmos, loaded with lots of different energies and entities and beings.
Wow. So a lot of, not, I shouldn't say a lot, there's been a few spiritual practitioners that some people have seen entities around or feel like there's attachments to them. How do they not know this is going on when they're going through this awakening and they're teaching us how to heal and how to do all these other things?
Yeah, I myself have been there early on in my ascension. I myself have to be all the time conscientious about energies because they're easy to, they're subtle. And also, depending on the level of evolution that soul or that teacher is in, because it requires deep shadow healing and deep work, and it doesn't happen overnight. So even if you have a Kundalini activation or you've been given the pearl of wisdom, you still have to go through layers and layers of ascension work, which can take years, decades. So and if they're not, and I think the problem with a lot of people is they feel, and I know I went through this for a few years after I was awakened, that you kind of get that pearl of wisdom. So it's easy to want to get stuck in feeling like you got it all figured out at that point, which is an ego construct, right? And so unfortunately, a lot of practitioners are in that mindset, and it's hard for them to think that maybe they still have more evolution to go through. And that can be part of it also. But again, those entities are subtle and those attachments are subtle. And so it really comes down to being highly and acutely in tune to your own feelings and to continuously doing your shadow healing, because we're going through layer upon layer upon layer of it. And what we're seeing unfold right now in our world is a collective shadow. We're dealing with massive collective shadow aspects right now. So yeah, I don't know. It's the way the ego mind works also, is to keep you blind from your own darkness, right?
Yeah. Well, if it's somebody you care about, you're like, I want to tell them, but then you risk them going, something's wrong with you, I don't have a problem, and then they kick you to the curb, so it's a fine line to walk there.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of that in our world and in our spiritual community too. And it's part of the purging process that we have to go through to keep, but I would just recommend to everybody, keep focused on yourself. I had that, you brought that up, and I literally had that happen to me 2 days ago by a girl I didn't know who got on my Facebook page and mocked, like, I made a post that says, if you're still attached to your religion, your race, your whatever, you don't know who you are as a soul, right? Because when you're a soul,
there's no labels.
You don't need those labels.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this girl claiming to be a spiritual teacher got on and argued about it. She wanted to fight for Zion and whatever she was doing, but she was claiming to be a practitioner and called me a fraud. And I just thought, wow, this girl doesn't see her own shadow, right? Like, she doesn't. So it's unfortunate because it's everywhere. And it's just one of those things where you just have to stay working on the self, because at the end of the day, that's all any of us can really do, is work on the self. And the more we do, the more that we're capable of helping others to see and grow and evolve. And those that really want to continue evolving will. And those that want to get stuck in their ego mind that they think they got it all figured out, they're going to be left behind. that stuff can't go with you in the higher realms. It all
Yeah.
has to be washed out, you know?
Yeah. So you said yourself, you went through some kind of attack or attachment. What was that experience like for you?
I have battled a lot of dark entities all of my life, really. I was a psychic child, and I went through a lot of different types of things. I grew up around serial killers, and that was when Ted Bundy was in Utah. And then we had another guy, Arthur Bishop, killed a bunch of kids in my neighborhood. He lived a couple blocks away from me. And so that was in the air, right? And so I started to study serial killers so that I could understand their mind. As a teenager, I started to really delve into it, and I started to get negative attachments because I was so focused on that. Now I understand, the more I focused on it, the more I was drawing it to myself. And so I started to learn how to combat that at a young age. But then a few years ago, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, I quit smoking cigarettes. And I was already quite deep into my ascension journey at that time. And I was also very highly guided by angelic beings. I had light beings come and perform a surgery on me and lift me out of my body and things like that. Long after I was already activated, my whole 12D body was activated, and I was still smoking, you know, because you get the wisdom, and then you have to really anchor it into the world and purge it out of yourself. So I think a lot of people get confused on that. They get the wisdom and then they stay stuck there. They don't realize they have to walk the talk too. So anyway, when I quit smoking, I was presented with a very, very, very gigantic draconian being that was controlling me. It had been attached to me while I was smoking. They are the creators of addiction, those draconians. Oh, wow. And yeah, it was their design in the first place. And so that's how they control humanity a lot, is through addiction and other forms, of course. But yeah, and so I was presented with that being first through dreams, and then my guides were showing me, and I could feel its grip on my spirit, and I could smell. They smell like sewer. They smell so terrible. They're like sewer and death, and they burn like acid. When you really start to tune in and start to feel yourself and start to combat these things, you will not be able to deny what it is when you get faced with it, if you do. Wow. So but I had to combat that, and it turned out to be probably about a 4-year battle within my being, my energy, that I was being used. My vessel was being used to help transmute energy for the collective, for the souls that have even passed over, that had been addicted or things like that. So I had what I call a Garden of Gethsemane experience for almost a 4-year period. It was really quite intense. Yeah.
Wow. Now, have you also helped people release these attachments from their field? Is that something that you work in as well?
Yeah, I do that as well. Both through cognitive therapy as well as through healing energy and astral healing as well. But for me, I everybody that I work with, I let them know, like, I can do certain things, but you yourself have to be the one to make certain changes, because if you don't make changes to your own behavior, you're just continuing to allow them to, you're opening yourself to them. Okay. And they do like to, the moment that you allow yourself some crack in your aura, they will jump right in, and they're ready and waiting.
Wow. What are some of the signs that people should look for? I've gotten to the point where I am in touch with myself enough to where when there's subtle things that go on, like I get angry for no reason, and I'm like, okay, that's not me. What's going on here? What are some clues that you could give people to keep an eye out for in their own field?
Okay. If you're feeling like two personalities. One part of you's going this way and the other part's going that way. You got something going on. You need to look at that. If you're dealing with a lot of depression and suicidal thoughts, that's usually attachment. And it's not to say that all of us probably don't have moments where we're like, I don't want to be on this planet anymore. But when you start to get into that real, how do I kill myself? I don't want to be, and you're just miserable all the time. That's a sign. Obviously there's a lot around sexuality. And so a lot of humans have been very convoluted and distorted in their ideals and understandings about sexuality, and your sexuality is so freaking sacred that most people do not understand what they're doing. I've also gone through 2 exorcisms personally in my life over sexual energy, and had portals open up where I saw demonic entities feeding on me. One portal on the ground, and another I saw the entities fly off of me after I went through a lot of healing through an exorcism. So there is a lot to be said about sexuality and the misuse of it. And again, addictions, and the more that you start to get in tune with your own self, the more that you start to see things. But it takes work. It's like you're trying to become an athlete, this great athlete, because that's what an ascended master is a great athlete. And in order to do that, you can't just go to the gym once a week and sit and stare at the TV while you're there. You have to do the work, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of work and a lot of tuning into the self daily for as long as it takes. So, a lot of people just aren't that in tune, and they're not doing the work. It's hard. It's hard to undo some of the things that you've done for decades. And now you realize, wait a minute, maybe I need to not do that anymore. And that's hard when you've been deep rooted in patterns and false programs. So those are some areas that, you should look at. That's how you're going to feel yourself.
Yeah. And not share your field with other people. Like you said, sexuality is sacred. You shouldn't be just, oh, I met this hot guy, I think I'll go sleep with him now, because you don't know what he's carrying around with him. And then you're going to share your field with him. I mean, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, but even going to a bar can do the same thing. You walk in there and you are opening yourself. I've seen portals open above bars where entities are feeding on the humans that are inside the bar. So putting yourself in environments where it's like a portal of dark energy. It's a portal. If you think about it, most of the people that are there are depressed. They're not loving themselves. They're miserable. They're angry. They're suicidal, whatever it is. You've got a whole room or building full of people that are dwelling in those lower energies. And those beings in the 4D are happy to feed on that. So, and I'm not saying you should never go there. I'm just saying, when you go, you should be very conscientious about it. And when you leave, you should be very conscientious about your energy field. I clear my energy when I leave, and I don't allow myself to take any of it on. I can feel them try to attach themselves. Not that I go to the bar, but when I did, or when I would go anywhere, a store or anywhere else, if the more you become mindful of your energy, the more you can make sure you're not bringing something home with you that you don't want home with you.
Yeah, my husband does that every once in a while. He travels for work, so he'll come home and I'll be like, okay, something's off right now. We need to clear your shit.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, even allowing family members that you love in your house when they have negative energy can draw attachments to you. I have a daughter, she's older now, but when she was 15, 16 years old, I had her and another girl that I had custody of, and all three of us lived in this home, and I would be working and I could hear one of them come in and I could feel who it was, because obviously I'm psychic. So I could tell which one it was, and I could tell what their mood was and what their energy was before I even saw them come through the house. And if they had bad energy, we were going outside to deal with it, to transmute it, to work through it before we come back in the house.
Wow.
I'm not going to have them
mom.
yeah, we're going to work through this outside, clear it out, and then we can come in the home where our sacred place is, right? So the more that you get in tune, the more you can start to make sure you're not, because they will slide right in again. Any little crack, they will slide in.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you still notice things trying to jump on you, so to speak, now? Or are you just very, very in tune to their game?
I would love to say that I'm never going to have to deal with that, but anybody that tells you that is a liar. Yeah. They're lying. And part of the reason why is because no matter how high vibe we are, how healed and how good we are at managing our energy, sometimes the higher vibrational beings, or the ones that are ascending more, getting more psychic attacks and getting attacked more by dark energies, because we are way showers, leaders. And that's what they want to take down. That's why we're getting attacked by social media platforms, and why we're being attacked by even, look at what the government's doing right now. They're stripping any conscious being out of their jobs all around the globe. So no, you're not going to be done with that. It's kind of like, you better be, it's really more about preparing you to handle more and more and more. And for me, because I have a lot of groups and pages online, especially on Facebook, I have quite large groups there. So I deal with a lot of psychic attacks, a lot of people that are not conscious, or they don't like you, or or they don't like something you said, or maybe they're jealous, or whatever it is, and you start to deal with a lot more of it. So really for me, I feel like I've been groomed to be able to handle it on a more massive scale. Not that it goes away, but that I've been able to handle it on a larger scale now.
And I gotta believe, I mean, because I feel this for me, and it doesn't mean that I'm not gonna pick up anything, but I do feel like my guides are also protecting me. They kind of got my back, but I still have to do some of the heavy lifting once in a while, but they still overall have got my back.
Yeah, they always have our back, but sometimes we will be tested with some pretty heavy duty stuff. And again, depends on your journey and your mission and whatever you're guided to do. But I know for me that I've been put kind of out there in the forefront, and I'm still being groomed for it. I'm still learning. I'm still adapting to this larger scale. And so it's been a process. But it's been a difficult process too, because I am so in tune that I can feel like bullet wounds in my back from energy of people putting psychic attacks on me. So I can feel it, and then the spirit will show me who it is, and I can move them out of my field and delete them or block them online or whatever it is. But just I try to be loving. But you can't deny that some of the stuff we're dealing with is not everybody wants to be a loving being, and you have to protect your energy. So, at the end of the day, it would be great if we could all just love each other right now, but it's not going to go that fast, is it?
Yeah, right. Now, what about the thought process that I've heard people say, well, we have been everything in every lifetime. We've been the murderer, the rapist, the nun, the priest, what have you. Are some of these people, like the serial killers, coming here to play out a role? And Absolutely. How did they get past that when they leave the physical realm? Do they get to go to the light, or how does that work?
Well, I definitely agree that we have been all roles, and that our high soul, because we're like a totem, right? We have all these layers of the self, and our high soul, far beyond this dimension, has already written the play for humanity, right? And because we've had different lifetimes, that's helping our soul to expand. We had to murder first, and then learn, and then get murdered, so we could see why it's not good. But we're also trapped in reincarnation cycles, because there's interference, there's ET interference from fourth dimensional beings. So some of it's our fault, or our soul chose it, and some of it is, well, we've been caught in this spider web for a long time. And so how does the soul get beyond being a serial killer? They have to personally evolve in their own personal evolution. They have to grow through it. And until they're ready to say, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't be doing this to people, they're going to reincarnate. They're going to keep having these problems over and over. And that's really what we're seeing, even with the child molestation and stuff, is that's been going on and on and on and on and on for thousands and thousands of years. And reincarnation cycles, and the soul gets trapped. And then you see it happen. This one got molested, then he grew up and he molested, you can't grow out of that as a soul and ascend until you break the cycle. And the only way to break the cycle is to get right with your own soul and get in alignment, and be honest with yourself, which means you have to face your own darkness. You know,
Wow.
that's hard for a lot of people to do, because a lot of people, most people, are like, I'm a good person, I do this right and I do this right. You know, they don't want to see some of the other things that they're doing that actually they don't realize are not in alignment, because they're conditioned in the physical world to be part of this human world, and that's not really who they are as a soul. So it takes a lot to really get in there. Deeper
we've been
layers.
so programmed too. So deeply programmed. It's hard.
Yeah, lots of layers.
Is like remote viewing and like implants, are those part of the attacks as well too?
I wouldn't say remote viewing is. In my understanding, remote viewing is, I've done it before. It's not, has nothing to do with attachment. It has to do
but
with
what if somebody negative is remote viewing you to find out what's going on with you?
Oh, I
Could
see.
that
Well,
be?
if their intentions are negative, I highly doubt that they'll be able to do that. It's probably possible, but
Okay.
you know, they'd have to be very skilled, for one thing. They would have to be a very skilled master to be able to do that, and still have negative intention to be able to access that capacity or that skill. Because oftentimes those higher consciousness gifts that come to us, psychic gifts, come when we get ourselves right with our spirit and and the divine source. So in my experience, you don't get developed in high voltage spiritual gifts until you got yourself right with the divine. You don't get to access Akashic records when you have bad intentions for humanity. That there's guardians there that protect that realm. And but that doesn't mean that people can't remote view, because I know that the Illuminati does do that, and they've been very practiced at it with their intentions the way they are, but they've learned how to manipulate it, just like they do with other things, where they make it about you chose it, kind of like with the smoking, right? You choose to smoke, and we tell you it's going to kill you, and we sell them to you, but you chose it, so it's on you karmically, right? To some degree. They'll have some karma too, but they've manipulated their sorcerers, right? So that it is possible that can happen. But
so is that why they tell us pretty much everything has been disclosed? Like, you look at a Hollywood movie, like let's say V for Vendetta, for example, if you've seen that one. My husband and I just watched it the other day. It talks about killing the world with virus deliberately, and these higher level Illuminati types trying to control what we see and censor everything they don't want us to see. Is that, I don't know where I was going with this question. Is that something that they have to do? Is that a universal law of some sort that they have to disclose to us? And then we can go ahead and accept it, and then it can be put back on us.
That's a big part of it. And also because they are dealing with masses of people, it's a soft way to introduce it to your consciousness so that the masses won't freak out and go into chaos. So it's a form of control. It's called predictive programming, and it's actually a CIA program. So if you research some of the CIA programs, it's really gnarly. And everything that is run and owned by the media is a branch of the government, you know, so they're implementing things. They have figured out how to control the masses through mind control through the media, and they use movies, and they use social media, and they use advertisements and everything else to impregnate your consciousness with whatever it is that they want you to think and believe. And if they're going to release a pandemic, they're not going to just do it without first impregnating the masses consciousness, because imagine how quickly everybody would have went into chaos if we didn't have already seen movies about it. This sounds familiar, we've been here before, right? Now it's because it's already been impregnated into your subconscious mind decades ago through movies and other forms of softly introducing it to you so that the masses won't freak out and start killing each other and everything else in the streets. Look at how easily and quickly they had the whole planet on lockdown.
Yeah, that was nuts.
So, but those are CIA programs, also mind control programs.
The level of deceit is so deep.
It's deep stuff. There was also in 2012 the opening ceremonies for the Winter Olympics. Have you seen that one? Yeah, it was really, really gruesome. When you go back and look at it, it's like, wow, that was just, it's really deep stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, again, it comes down to you and your own soul, and you being in alignment with your truth, and you being in alignment with source and spiritual law. And the moment that you do that, they don't have power over you. That's the thing, is they just want power over you, which is out of alignment with spiritual law. And when you get in alignment, you realize they don't have any power over you. None. Yeah. They want to.
So let's say, okay, Ellen, let's say I call you up and I'm like, hey, I think I have a negative entity attached to me. How do I get rid of it? You know, how would I do that myself? How would you direct somebody to do that?
If they want to do it themselves, I would say to begin with doing shadow healing and figuring out where it's coming from. If you don't figure out where it's coming from, you can't get rid of it.
Okay. So for example, what might be a shadow thing that would create an attachment for someone?
Well, again, it could be anything. Who you had sex with, what you were thinking, what did you put in your body, who, it could be all kinds of things. It could be all kinds of things. And you know, that's really what shadow healing is about, is to go inside of yourself and do your spiritual work and figure out where you're BSing yourself.
Now, what if somebody's just negative energy got onto you because somebody's having a shitty day and they throw all your crap on you, and then you're carrying it around? How do you clear that off?
Well, you got to figure out what you did that was out of alignment with the spirit in order to have attracted it to yourself, because it doesn't just happen by accident just because you were around somebody. You yourself had to think something or do something that was out of alignment with truth.
So every time somebody gets something that comes into their field, it's likely something that they've brought in because of something they're not addressing.
To some degree, yeah, really. Even with what we're dealing with on a collective with the censorship, if you think about it, and I was downloading this, I didn't all the way get through it the other day, but I downloaded some stuff that was starting to show me what was going on, and it was a little bit freaky. It was like, wow, wait a minute. Okay, so in a way, we as light workers, years ago, for some of us been doing this for decades, right? So years ago, we've been getting information about getting out there and using the social media to tell everybody about the truth and this, that, and the other. Well, on the flip side of that, the dark energies knew that we were doing that and were observing us the whole time, watching us, monitoring us, tracking us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they already know who the light workers are. You see? So did we attract that to ourselves? we're in this game together, light and dark. Yeah, I was downloading it, and I really didn't get all the way through it, but as it was coming through, I was like, oh wow, yeah, we really did almost get manipulated in a way by the darkness. And yet at the same time, we, because of our light, have the power to transmute it that they don't have. They can't, again, the light, as it ascends, can go higher than they can go, and they cannot get in those higher realms without having the right vibration. The guardians will never let that happen. So it's not going to happen. But while we're here playing this game together, we're polishing through all of the things that have to be transmuted. And that's part of what we're doing as ascension in our ascension journeys, is transmuting the darkness. And it's quite an intense situation when you look at it from that collective level, right? With everything that's going on in the world right now, we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, we do. Boy. So what, speaking of that, what do you see on the horizon for us? We're in October 2021 now. Where might you see early 2022 for the collective?
I think that the light's already won, of course. And as much as it looks bad in the physical reality, I don't like to put too much power on that, because I can also see that on a collective level, people all around the globe are rising up. And that's profoundly good for humanity. And so I do see that we're going to move through this. When, I don't know, but I mean, I can see a lot of progress and a lot of improvement. And I could see that the dark forces really were desperate in their grappling the last year or two, right?
Yeah.
But I foresee that the light will win, and that humanity will overcome this if enough people can put their consciousness on their sovereignty and on spiritual alignment and on positive truth and love for all beings, and not agreeing to be controlled by other energies, because that's what these darker ones want. They want control over humanity. They want control over your soul. Once you give away your own power and your own control, your spirit's going to be, you're not going to be happy. It's not a good thing. So but I see so many now all around the world. You're seeing it in Italy right now. They're ready to crucify those bad guys, right? Like their pitchforks are out, and they're, so there's a lot of good, and they're doing it all over the place now. You can see it in France, and you can see it in Ireland, and you see it in the UK, and even here in Las Vegas where I live, we had a rally last week where, the people they're waking up and they're not having it. And so I do believe that we're going to be able to move through it, but we really have to not be lazy about getting up and participating in the resistance as far as that goes, because, if we're passive about it, you can't get anywhere being passive as far as this goes. So.
Right. Totally. I agree with that. So, wow, I really appreciate all of this, Ellen. You have some very good information for us. So tell everybody how they can find you and the types of services that you offer for folks, for anybody that might be interested in getting in touch with you.
Okay. The best way to find me, obviously, is my website, because you never know with these other platforms. I am on Facebook, but I've been banned a lot on there, and I don't know how long I'll be there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. But my website's the best way. So it's ellenred.com, and that's REDD, 2 Ds at the end. So ellenred.com. And I do all kinds of spiritual healing, psychic, intuitive mediumship. I do twin flame guidance, ascension guidance. I really work a lot with people's shadow, because I can see the things that they can't see about themselves. So I'm able to help bring it forward. I do a lot of shamanic healing, energy healing, channeling spirits. And I also do starseed readings. So as I've gone in my own journey and ascension, I have met the Pleiadians and gone through a lot of really high voltage stuff over the years. And over the time, I've been shown by the galactics a lot of other things, like how to look at somebody's being and go through a session with them and find out what star system they're from. Sometimes they're from multiple star systems and they've had different, you know, incarnations and different things. And so I do starseed readings and channel galactics and connect people to their guides and that kind of a thing. So
that's awesome. Great
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my dear, I appreciate you being here and sharing all your wisdom with us. It's going to be so helpful to so many people.
Yeah, very welcome.
All right,
Thanks.
my dear. Thank you. Bye-bye.